we have not prepared an agenda or a topic for today because we have sort of been reflecting on the numerous demands that are on training directors' time at this time of year. And we thought that it might actually be more helpful if we left this relatively unstructured and had you all raise issues that you would like for us to discuss as a community. I volunteered that if no one stepped up, that I would be happy to share my woes, but then it'll turn into a monologue of me complaining. So I'm going to try and be quiet. But we would love to hear from you. So Jeff, the next slide, please.
Oops, let me go back.
So as you know, we're on a Zoom call and not a webinar. So please mute yourself unless you're speaking. We're kind of a small group today, which is, I think, sometimes nice to create conversation. So you can certainly use the chat, but feel free to raise your hand. We're going to stop the slide sharing so we'll be able to see that. You also can just unmute and speak up. The call is being recorded for our website, and we also will upload the chat transcript when we're done. Next slide, please, Jeff. I'm Shona Vaz. I'm the secretary on the APPIC board, and I'm going to let my colleagues introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone.
Oh, sorry.
Go
ahead.
Go ahead, Kimberly.
No, sorry. I'm Kimberly Hill, and I'm on the APPIC board, and you know me most currently as APPI coordinator.
Matt.
Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Zimmerman. I'm on the APPIC board. My home institution is the Counseling Center at the University of Virginia.
And I'm Jeff Baker, Executive Director for APPIC. Welcome all 32 of you today. We're glad to have you on the call. And as Shona said, maybe some of you joined just a little bit late. We're here for support today, and we're going to address a few issues that have come up, and we will hope to be a resource for you or get you to a place where we can provide that resource and support for you.
Thanks, Jeff. So as I said, the agenda is open, and we want to hear from you. One more slide, Jeff, please. And this is the last one we're going to share. So the question for today really is, what issues are currently important for you and for your training program, and how can we support you?
Okay, I'll stop share here.
So I can start with a little prompt. How has the new APPI portal been working for those of you who have already received applications? We have Dr. Hill here with us, who unfortunately for her, I have her cell phone number. So I text her a lot when I have questions, but she is, she's here for all of us today. So if you have specific questions, you're in the right place.
Hi, this is Jake Farnsworth. I am a new training director at the VA Eastern Colorado Healthcare System. And I would say as a whole, the new portal worked well for us. There was initially some problems downloading and exporting some of the information, and particularly it seems where pivot tables were concerned, that those fields wouldn't, they kind of, threw off the whole process if they weren't specified correctly. So if you had, and it's unclear when you're creating a custom export, which fields are pivot tables. And if you don't define them correctly, then the whole export won't download. So we had to go and just delete those from our export, and it worked as a whole. But I guess my staff had some questions as to whether admissions by liaison will allow us to provide some feedback after this round is over, because I think another issue was that the formatting greatly expanded the size of the PDF from about 40 pages in years past to about 80, which obviously, because our site prefers to export those files rather than reviewing through the portal itself. So I was curious if there'd be an opportunity to provide feedback to admissions by liaison.
Mhm. Well, yes, tons of opportunities to provide feedback. We absolutely, we're hoping will be more of like begging you for feedback to improve it. I think, you know, doubling the size of a full PDF is not okay. You know, I think as folks get more savvy, there's a lot of sites and feedback over the years that I don't even want the full 40 pages of the APPIC or whatever. You know, I just want my 5 pieces that I look at. And, you know, there is a way to create the PDFs with just your items that you're interested in. And so as people get more savvy, and I'm actually going to be sending out a members news announcement today to update everybody on what those funky delays were about, just more specificity about that in terms of delays from time of submission to when the material would actually arrive. But in addition, sending you our latest video with some cool new tips on certain features, but also embedded in that is a survey I created, very simple, with an immediate focus of, you know, please let me know if there's 3 features that you would love to know how to do simply now, just so that we can create more and more videos that will work now that everybody's been able to play with it for a couple weeks. It was hard to get that type of feedback before people even had access to an application in their own portal. So that should be going out today or tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that if there's anything in your immediate, but then definitely in the long term, like after this cycle is over, there will be ample pleas for information, pleads for feedback on what we can do to make this better. Because I'm really excited about the portal overall, and realize that it's very overwhelming for a first go when on top of just everything that we're experiencing, and then having to learn something new is like, could not have been the worst timing. But then I will already forward this feedback about the custom export and the pivot table issue. That's the first time I've heard of that one, but I'm sure you're not alone.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I really loved the comment feature on the application. So when I did my first sort of overall training director review, I put in comments as it occurred, sort of mostly for like a major area of interest for the applicant, which then later when I was able to, when I was assigning reviewers was really helpful. And I could put those in, and then someone else was able to go and read my comments and create the spreadsheet. So because of that, I was able to do a little bit more delegating this year, which worked really nicely.
Oh, cool.
Hi, Brooke Guerrero here from West Coast Children's Clinic. And I have one of your interns, Kimberly Hill. So I was actually planning on emailing you for a couple of reasons, but I know there were like a few glitches here and there, but the new APPIC has helped streamline our process. My favorite feature is being able to summarize, to like pull the data to do a summary at the top. And my selection committee is thrilled. So because we have an evaluation form, we use Google review forms to collect that data. So we pull it up, side by side, and I have like all the demographic or all the like essential kind of outline of who the applicant is already pulled at the top. And my selection committee the last couple of weeks have been giving lots of shout outs. Well, to me, which I'm like, well, thank you, but it's really not me. I just learned how to do it. So I'm really grateful. It's helped tremendously. I have like a couple of ideas for feedback, but other than that, I really like, one is the evaluation form, that we can't export data from an evaluation form.
Yeah.
I figured like everybody, I was like, created the whole evaluation form and wound up calling admissions by liaison too. I am so grateful that when you're in need, you can call someone and they actually answer the phone. So I was so grateful that they walked me through it and then said, sorry, you can't export that form you just created.
Yeah.
But it saved me so much time in spending hours trying to figure out how to export it if it wasn't in there.
Yeah.
But
well, I'm so glad that you had a positive experience on a couple features, and then also with the support. That's great news to hear. But also, I recently met with, our team of engineers and developers, and, are like, this export, what can we do? Can we make it happen now? And it's quite a complex thing. And they're like, we just, since there never was an evaluation form in the old APPIC, they had no idea that it was going to be so popular. And so it just wasn't even on their radar that's the way that's the way it wanted to be used, which obviously makes sense. So I'm just bummed that I didn't know that it wasn't an Excel report at the beginning, so that I could have just saved all of you time who wouldn't have developed an evaluation form if you didn't know that it wasn't going to end up with an Excel spreadsheet. So
I do have to say I got very lucky that about halfway through I wanted to test it out and realized halfway through I hadn't spent. I did say I got a little lucky there.
Well, the good news is that your portal should. Don't hold me to this, but I think that form will still live there next year, so that when you start next cycle, you're halfway. You've just done it a year early.
Yep.
Oh, well, I'll take it.
Promise that those will stay in there, those evaluation forms, and you can continue to improve and streamline and hopefully prepare them for export is the goal. But
that'd be great.
This is a huge launch of this new product, and Kimberly has done such a wonderful job of guiding us through this. It's nice to hear that support's been helpful, because we get a lot of the other side of that, and we try to get that addressed, and they are pretty responsive and immediately talking with the support and saying this is not the way to answer this question, and so we're pleased with the responsiveness of the liaison to do this.
If you did end up building your evaluation form, just a couple tips. The portal appears to have trouble saving your evaluation form if you do it in anything other than Chrome. So my reviewers couldn't save in either Safari or Explorer is the worst. Sometimes if Safari is hit or miss, but it does save in Chrome. And so that while we still had to enter the data in a spreadsheet, at least most of the evaluation forms were in one place for me to find them. Otherwise they'd be, in my mailbox, slid under my door. Some people would send me the reviews in a spreadsheet. Other people would send emails with PDFs. So it's nice to get it all in one place if people are able to save.
And so we also used the form. We went ahead, even though we couldn't export it, my administrative assistant and I felt like it would be worth it to try. And also we really wanted people to use the APPIC in the portal, because some of them are resistant to change, but it's so slick to be able to use that portal and just be able to click on things. But the most frustrating thing for our psychologists was sometimes they would click, like they'd toggle between something on there, and then everything they put on the form, they lost because they didn't hit save before they moved. And I mean, I have done it too, more times than I probably want to admit. And every time I'm like, oh my goodness, I just want to I get so frustrated with that. So I think if there was like some sort of auto save, that would be super helpful, but it's been really slick.
Auto save.
Or even if you can save before you move on, you can just save at the end, Kimberly, instead of having to save with every field. That would be helpful. Because you can't toggle between responses.
Yeah, I think that's a live
that seems
form.
weird.
I think that's why it doesn't save immediately.
I'm sorry, what, Jeff?
My understanding it's a live form, so it has to be told to save.
Okay, well, definitely that's fantastic feedback. I will, we meet every week with the developers and the engineers. So if there's things that they can fix in lifetime and, for this cycle, they immediately get on it. And then otherwise it's a great, it goes into our enhancement for next cycle bucket.
You also need to save comments. That's another thing I learned the hard way. So
Yeah, I will also echo thank you, Kimberly, for all of your time and energy put into this. And also generally the feedback has been super positive. But I will also say I've had several reviewers texting me over the weekend going, oh my God, I'm going to murder this portal because I just typed in all my stuff and then I hit save at the end. And I guess maybe I missed a section and the whole thing is erased. I've done it 3 times. So I've had like more than one person have that similar frustration. Yeah.
That is so painful.
I'm like, don't murder the portal, just take a breath. But yeah, that has been a frustration for folks around here.
Well, this is the first I'm hearing about this. So this is awesome feedback and it's obviously shared. So, I can put this at the top of the priority list because, there's many, believe it or not, I got 2 inquiries today from training directors. I hear there might be a new portal. So, there's still a lot of people, if a change can be made for this cycle, there's still a lot of people that could benefit, even if you're all done with your reviews, which I doubt, but yeah.
So I was going to say, I've been able to do quite a bit with the portal and the forms and exporting data and things into Excel. But one of the things I would like, at least when this cycle is over, like for the spring, is a test case, because there's a lot of options in the portal, but going back and trying to ensure it doesn't corrupt any of the applicant's data is always a concern of mine. And so, building the forms, coding the JavaScript to make a form exportable to Excel, manipulating some of the backend stuff to make the APPI as functional and streamlined as possible is awesome, but I don't want it to corrupt an applicant's data. So being able to have some kind of test environment or test case would be great once this cycle is over.
Yeah, and it wasn't possible before, but now that once I will inquire and see what can be done, if there's something now that there's an official launch and all of this, that maybe there's something, or even leaving your portals accessible so that you could play even after you admit, even after that you could still play around and create things. And so yeah, no, that's wonderful feedback.
Yep, and let me express my thanks to Dr. Finley as well, because he's allowed me to post 2 of his videos on there about creating forms and Excel, exporting Excel. They're complex, but you can stop and pause and use it as a great resource. So thank you for sharing those, Dr. Finley. And I think there's going to be more creativity as it comes along, but it's been very helpful. I remind Kimberly that this is very cumbersome for sure, but with APPIC 1.0, we were not allowed to make any changes. They all had to be waited until the next enhancement cycle. So yeah, they couldn't take it down unless it was a crisis. So this new platform, it allows us to make several of these changes in live time for sure. So that's been very helpful to address some of the issues. And I know there are lots of issues out there, and the auto save definitely is something that we're going to prioritize for sure. Let's see if we can make that work.
I would like to just make a comment about, that when so we got about 40,000 something applications over that span between October 29th and November 2nd, 3rd-ish. Quite a flow. So the average, for those of you who are still receiving applications, just FYI, so there was that. So in a normal traffic flow time, the system refreshes itself and pushes the data through at every 2.5 hours. So the data should never really arrive more than 2.5 hours. And that is the case during normal traffic times. During that week, there were such significant delays in all of the pieces of the APPIC arriving that caused mass panic amongst some of the students who were getting contacted by training directors saying your stuff's missing. And then, so it was a lot of panic in that first week of November. But then also what was happening was because of those delays, it did overshadow a glitch that was happening for a small subset of applicants who, for whatever reason, they had to go back. They found an error in their APPIC, or their DCT noticed an error in their APPIC. So they had to go unlock their APPIC, go back, make a correction, and then re-verify them. And then what happened is it created 2 applications for those applicants, and it was forwarding incomplete, funky information for those applicants. So they were able to identify that, but that problem was overshadowed by the delay that was happening. So now they've built in this extra validation security check that that every application has to have a full time to track data. So if you're seeing anybody with incomplete data at this point, should be user error, like they forgot to attach an assessment report. There were several, I don't know how many in total, but I helped 5 students who just didn't enter the assessment instruments. They thought it would just be forwarded from their time to track account, which doesn't happen, just the hours. So so those will happen. Letters of recommendation, of course, transcripts, or treatment summary. But other than that, every piece should be there. So if it's those types of things, just go ahead and write. At this point, it's totally fine to just write the applicant and just say, hey, it looks like you forgot to upload an assessment report. But there shouldn't be any missing hours data or any of the core APPIC pieces. So hopefully that's helpful.
Kimberly, can applicants upload components of the application even if the deadline has passed and the portal is closed?
Only the assessment report and the treatment summary, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
And letters will still arrive and transcripts will still arrive. So,
but we built that part out separate, the assessment report and the treatment summary, because those are things that students often forget. So we built that out where they could add that later.
So Kimberly, I'll just share, it's worked really well for us.
Yeah.
And I think it's just such a substantial improvement from APPIC 1. I'm particularly enjoying the filters and playing around with those, and the dashboard, and the phases have been super helpful to us as well. I've had no problems with saving unless I leave and go back without saving. So it sounds to me like there are really significant differences across users in terms of the save function. And I'm curious as to what that's a function of. Is it a function of Mac versus PC or browser or something like that? And so I am wondering if there's any utility, and for those who have had serious saving issues, just throwing into the chat like what browser you use to see if there's any pattern. Shona?
The only pattern we were able to identify was Explorer and Safari. You couldn't save, but it saves in Chrome.
Yeah, I do use Chrome.
Yeah.
and it has to be one of the newer versions of Chrome too. So if your version's outdated, it's best to get that updated. Someone asked about applications and how, if you have any comparison to last year.
Yeah, so I just typed that in the chat. So I keep tracking the numbers, and it's very consistent that there's about 3,000 more applications in the pool. There's also 300 more applicants in the pool. I'll let Greg be the final, Greg Kylan be the final, he's the big holder of all the match numbers. So I won't release those, but there are an average of, there have been 300 more students at this point in time who have submitted applications than this point in time last year. So that would account easily for the 3,000 extra applications. And it's really interesting to think about that, because we've been all wondering, and I certainly have had many conversations with my own students about, since they're saving $10,000 on not traveling for interviews, they're like, well, I'm saving so much money. Should I just throw in 5 more applications, just to really help my chances? Like, no, no, don't. And so, but it doesn't look like that happened so far. I mean, we still have a few, a couple weeks to go. A lot of programs are extending their deadlines, and I'm not sure if that's because they're nervous that I'm not sure if they're nervous that they're not going to get enough applications, or if they're trying to be more accommodating for just an understanding about all the stresses that everybody's going on, and knowing too, maybe they don't need as much time to set up everyone's going to save so much time in the organizing of internships, and not having to deal with catering and worry about people buying flights and those types of things, that maybe people aren't as stressed about the review time of applications. I'm not sure, but those are my musings.
I know the students are still stressed. I can tell you that.
Well.
They're anxious. I don't have the exact numbers, but there are slightly more number of students participating in the match as compared to last year at this time. So those numbers that you have are probably reasonably accurate. Probably not 300 or 400 more students, but
right.
There are more students, and there are slightly less slots. Some programs have closed, some it's COVID related, and some are financially related. So that's going to have a little bit of an effect on the match balance.
Kimberly, one thing I was surprised about, my applications are up about 10%, and I was surprised that the total number of hours, both assessment and intervention hours, don't really look that different from previous years. So I thought that there would be students applying with a lot fewer, given the disruption to training in the last 6 to 9 months, but that has not been our experience at our site at all.
Do you tend to attract PhD candidates who have spent an extra year in their program?
They're mostly, I'd say, 5th and 6th years, yes, and
So
some 4th years.
So it's really the people who are applying in right out of the 4th year who are dependent for that, where they started getting a hit to their hours in March. My 5th and 6th year students look amazing with hours. And then I sent some students very nervously out in the match this year who are fantastic, but my lowest was 12 assessment hours and 373 intervention hours. I'm like, okay, fingers crossed. It is an outlier, but still, the 4th years are the ones that, right. And the assessment hours are just brutal. But I think you're going to see it even worse this coming year. I have some very panicked students who will be applying next year who are freaking out about their hours, and particularly assessment. And I'm like, I'm sorry. We're doing the best we can. Everyone's in the same boat.
Number of sites have made some accommodation for testing, but there are a number that still can't do face-to-face testing. Mm-hmm. Certainly not as freely as they used to.
It seemed like we were at our site sort of limping back to normal with neuropsychological assessment in particular. And our hospital is again sort of anticipating a surge, encouraging people not to go in and to work remotely as far as possible. So we expect that we will return again to the situation that we had back in March and April, which will further impact the students. The uncertain nature of the pandemic.
Yeah. In talking to my students, I think what they're most concerned about at this point, now that they the interview offers are starting to roll in. So everyone, the whole system's calming down because that means the whole arc worked. You know, people were able to submit, DCTs were able to verify, internship train directors are able to use their new portal. And so it means the whole arc. So the system's kind of calming down anxiety. And now they're shifted to, well, how am I going to rank these sites that I can't visit? And so they're really nervous about missing out on that. Although they're thrilled to save the $10,000, they're super stressed about how on earth are they going to really be able to make those fine-tuned decisions. And so I don't know if you all have come up with creative ideas of capturing your cultures through video formats, or I don't know what you all have figured out, but that's where the students, now that interview offers are coming in, that's their next concern is.
That's perhaps a great segue to our next topic that we thought might come up today, which is virtual recruitment. But Dr. Simon was about to say something. I just wanted to see if she had something to add before we move on.
Well, that's a great topic change. So I don't want to derail that. I was going to jump in about hours though, from the opposite end of the spectrum. We have had no shortage of direct service hours for our trainees. And in fact, what we're struggling with is the overload associated with doing this work remotely, and feeling caught between, you know, serving our student population. We're trying to be creative and flexible about trying to make the year more manageable for our trainees, but feeling some limits there with what we can do. So I'm personally struggling with feeling like we're working our trainees really hard.
Right. Telehealth, most people show up for their telehealth appointments.
And I wonder too, like how that will impact recruitment, because our current trainees are often the excellent ambassadors for our programs, and their experiences are not going to be consistent with how our sites are usually, operate. So maybe that would also be something to kind of address as we think about messaging and packaging and recruitment. In July, we did a webinar series on virtual recruitment, and those resources, the recording and the materials and the slides from that presentation are up on the APPIC website. So if you haven't watched, that might be something to sort of get the wheels turning a little bit. And I encourage you to go take a look. We have sort of struggled with the idea of what we're going to do. And I would love to hear from people who are ready. Our interview date is in 3 weeks, our first day. And so I'd love to hear from people what they're doing to recreate the culture.
I mean, I'm happy to share. I know I'm on the board with you, Shona, but I'll be happy to share. We did create 3 videos, and we tried really hard to have those videos be conversations, because a lot of the feedback that we get from interviewees when they come to visit us is they like to see how we interact. That gives them information about our personalities and our styles and the tone and the culture. So we have one from current interns where they're conversing about their experience, one from former interns, and then one with trainers who engage in core components of the training program. And they talk a little bit about their piece, but what I really encourage people to do is sort of ask each other questions and fill in gaps and things like that. Because I think we all know that, you know, our interviewees, they're much more likely to remember the tone of their interview experience than the actual content. So, I mean, the content has value. There's nothing remarkably different about our content that we talk about than what is available on the website. But I think what sticks with them more is the tone. So those are some things that we've done.
I think we copied your idea, Matt, of having alumni videos. So we did have to hire a videographer at some expense to the program. And we've asked about, I think, 15 previous externs and fellows, and we made one video for both internship and fellowship programs to answer a series of questions and record themselves doing it and then send it in. And I haven't seen the final product yet because we just started this, but we're hoping to create some sort of montage of clips. And then when the videographer came in, he did actually record 4 of our faculty who were former trainees. So we'll have some assortment of lifetime interactions and then some recorded on Zoom, some taping themselves and sending them in. Because I think that right now, our trainees don't know what the site is like in the absence of the pandemic. And so their experiences are completely colored.
And that's kind of the way it is for everybody. So it's going to be an interesting year and developmental wise, but I don't think you'll find any less enthusiasm from trainees. They're wanting to get in there and do what they can do.
I really appreciate that idea. I know something we've been struggling with a lot is similar. One of the things we hear back from applicants and interns who match with us is how much they enjoy like our interactions with each other and just how like jovial and lighthearted we are as a department. And I'm like, I do not know how we're going to get this across in this type of format because I feel like it just doesn't come through. And so we were playing around with some ideas about like smaller groups with applicants and then also having some of the video recordings that you guys had talked about in that July meeting. But that's part of where we're struggling. We have to get our internship invite letters out next Wednesday and thinking about, we haven't fully figured out what our interview process is going to look like. And so having that now rise to the top of our list of what is this going to look like in this format, and lots of pressure. And a professional videographer, I'm like, oh, that's not going to happen at our site, but it'll be good enough.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think actually, homegrown videos may be more believable. Not to knock your fancy videographer, Jonah.
Well, we haven't seen the product yet, so let's not be too optimistic.
Yeah. But I think if it's too slick, they're not going to believe it. They're going to feel like it's marketing material rather than capturing the essence of, and I think that, as I tell my, I didn't introduce this in my intro, but I'm the DCT of the PGSP Stanford PsyD Consortium. And so one of I think the elements they always come back with from their interviews of when, because I hold ranking meetings with each of them, and the 2 things that really stand out from their experience are how they connected with the training director. So it's like, there will be a site that they went to visit that was the bottom of their list going in, and then they come back and it is risen to the top. They're like, oh my gosh, the training director was just so warm and so training focused. It was so cool. And it's like, zoop, I'm talking like 10 spots, like right to the top. And so I think whatever can be done over Zoom to have that same warmth and enthusiasm come through, I think is really critical. I mean, this is from what I hear on this end. And then I think it would be just critical to have that Zoom space with current interns where they trust that there's no staff or faculty involved in that piece so that the students can be, I would hate to see a slick video of alumni or current interns replace their opportunity to actually interact with the current interns so that they can really ask, well, okay, I know that video was gorgeous, but is it really like that? To be able to, that seems critical to me for that space.
One of the pieces we're going to add is not just an hour with our current interns, but when we've finished interviewing, I'm going to get some alumni and set up some breakout rooms for each track with former interns if they'd be willing to do it. And I think that that might be helpful.
That sounds intense. That's,
Yes.
I mean, intensive in terms of time.
Time and coordination.
Yeah.
Yes.
But lovely.
Yeah.
Our
We've been
interns were
doing our-
joking that while they were making their video, they'd keep like looking off in the corner as if I'm like watching them, or, you know, there's some sort of like nefarious force making them say those things.
Mhm.
I was like, please don't do that.
Well, Matt, you like to perform songs. Did you have video? Did you make a music video?
No, as I tell Greg, you know, I have to be inspired, and I haven't been for years. Although there is an ABBA song that's kind of bouncing around in there. We'll see how it plays out. No, Bee Gees, Bee Gees. Silly me.
We've been doing our interviews by video for years now, as a way of kind of equalizing access to the interview. So it's really interesting to hear other people's reactions to moving toward video when that fills old hat. What's new? I am gradually accepting that I need to organize a virtual open house. We have done open houses in the past, but it's not been required. We make that very clear. It doesn't impact their ratings. So our open houses have also tended to be small. I will say generally we've done well, but it's interesting hearing how this might, you know, be impacting candidates, perhaps not knowing our site as well as sites where they are there in person.
We tried to, many years ago, APPIC considered banning site visits or not site visits, but interviews because it was so burdensome and there was an equity issue. And the students were the ones that raised the biggest fuss on that and said, no, we want to see where we're going to be at for this year. We want to get a feel for the faculty for this site. So that's was the biggest pushback back then, for sure. So whatever your video does or whatever you can do for your open house to give them a sense of that culture and that climate, it's probably going to be very important. It can't be just some sterile video. It has to have some interaction with it at some point there when you can talk a little bit more about the culture that you might have at your site, especially when you're trying to get through that we're a fun-loving, lighthearted kind of organization versus someone that has you working 80, 90 hours a week and doing assessments as fast as you can. And those both are just fine. The student just wants to know which one of those am I interviewing at, or which one of those sites is here. So connections with former alums, Shauna, I think is a great way to do that. And we've always made alumni available to the students and have never told them what to say. And sometimes that's helps recruit certain folks, and sometimes it didn't.
It's sort of interesting to me. I don't think that our interviewees ever see the faculty interact with each other. So I have them in a couple of meetings. One is a big group PowerPoint and then smaller group interviews, but they have individual interviews with all of the other faculty, and except for faculty coming in to get themselves some lunch, they don't really see us interact at all. So interesting aspect that I think maybe we've been missing, and I might want to think about how to incorporate that. Any other ideas for virtual interviews and and recruitment. What are some of your concerns as training directors when you miss some of the sort of nonverbal or more subtle cues that you might be able to pick up from in-person interactions that you will miss on video?
We like to look at how interns or the applicants interact with each other. Because what we found is there's some people that are really competitive and will, you know, not be so kind to their other applicants, and versus others that are a lot more collegial. And, you know, in our environment, that says a lot for about somebody we're going to spend a year with, and that they're going to have a peer group to interact with. So I think we'll really miss out on that aspect, is the applicants interacting with each other and just seeing how that happens.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see how you could recreate that. We certainly did that at my site. The administrative assistant always filled out an evaluation form of the interns as applicants waited in the waiting room to come see us, because she could kind of tell who was being polite, moving out of the way, or getting out of the way kind of thing, and who was not. So it was always a good variable to assess, but I think it would be very important to figure out how you might be able to do that this year, whether it's a group lunch on where you have all the applicants in that group, or open house interacting. I think something like that might be helpful to give you a sense of that. I don't know if I would base a huge amount of effort on that, but I think it would give you some sense of that.
Somehow create a psychological escape room together where they had to get out together.
I like that. How do we get out of this Zoom call?
Yeah, exactly. We did that as an APPIC board team building event, and it was definitely fun, but we had to work together to get out. Sadly, we didn't get out.
Was that a digital escape room that you did, or like it was in person?
A couple of years ago, yeah.
Okay.
But I was just thinking, like, because I'm toying around, I'm about to go into our admission, so I don't have an internship, but I have the doc program and then the postdoc at Stanford. So I've been toying around that's such a critical piece of just even the way they interact with each other, you know, because I always start out whatever interview type of day I'm doing is always this program overview, and it's usually a group of 8 people. And watching the way they interact with each other is going to be lost, but also just their response to me and how they're interacting. And that's so different on Zoom. Even my most lovely students that I know and love now, they're weird on Zoom and when I'm teaching class. And so it's going to be hard not to extrapolate too much from that, their Zoom presence. So it is a loss. So if we come up with our $1 million idea of a cool escape room activity to find that out, I think that would be great.
Well, in the chat, there are a couple of people who have done it. So Brooke and Jade, I'm wondering if you can share that.
I'm looking for the link now to drop in the chat. It was a company out of Sacramento. It was cheap. It was $5. I think $5 a player. So yeah, I mean, I was able to.
Ours was a little bit more.
Like $40.
Yeah, ours was a little bit more, but it was out of Utah, and it was really like you go in a different. There's a game master that shows up, which is a little weird, but they're running the whole thing, and then you go to a few different breakout rooms, but then it's a lot of Google Drive. So there, you know, people are filling, you have to basically do puzzles via Google Drive. So you're sharing screen constantly, and they had a ball. It was like, okay, I'm going to share my screen now, and then you share your screen next, and then they're coordinating constantly. So that, I think because we had a person, it might've been a little bit more expensive. It wasn't horrible though. And we were, I think it was 8 people that we had total, and I was in there with them, and I just sort of let them do it. And it was, they had a good time because we were trying to figure out how to do socialization with them. So they very much look forward to it. So
great. Our game master for the APPIC board was also a little weird, as I recall. So
Oh, that's so great.
Oh, that's a good one too.
This is a great idea for cohort socialization and for the interns. We've just gone back to not having them be on site anymore, unless they have to for their clinical experiences. So especially around the holidays, we always had, you know, sort of nice holiday celebrations, and we won't be able to do any of that this year. So I like this escape room idea. I have to look it up.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Ours didn't have a game master. I think it probably would have been helpful though, because I put them all in breakout rooms, and then I kind of cruise the breakout rooms to check on everyone. Like, you guys doing okay? Anyone having a escape room panic attack? And most people loved it. There were a couple who were frustrated and like, get me out of this room. But I think it was cheaper to go my route though.
Yeah, I think so. I think ours was a little bit more, but I think because we didn't have any welcoming anything, they allowed us to do it because there was no food ever. Like, we had nothing in the beginning. It was like show up online. So they allowed us to do it, but it was a little bit more because we had the person be a part of it. They had the time going for an hour of ticking down. I think we got out with 4 minutes to spare.
And did you get any good data from that interaction?
Yeah, well, you know, it's interesting because we did that 2, maybe 3 months in. So like the end of August. So 2 months in, the end of August. Got a sense of who the quiet ones were going to be, which we already sort of knew because they sort of laid back, who the folks who were more analytical in the way they thought, who the ones that probably needed to be a little bit more quiet. They talked too much and didn't let others jump in. And then definitely even some sleepers. There were a few folks, which you see even now clinically, right? Like I know I'm thinking of 2 of our interns right now who are very good, and you wouldn't know it because they only speak when they have something really thoughtful to say. And in the game, they were filling out stuff. So when someone asked, they had already filled it out because you're on like 5 different Google Sheets at this point. So yeah, you got to, you know, learn a little bit about their personality and characteristic. They worked well together in that short period of time too, which was nice. They were able to sort of work well together. So, and we've done the escape room because you can usually find a Groupon. So we've done it previous years anyway. Just in the area. I'm in Philadelphia, so there's always a ton of them, and they always have a Groupon. So we've done it in previous years as well, and it's always been something they've enjoyed. We just take an afternoon in the summer and go to the escape room. So
that's so fun.
We are almost at time, and we want to thank you so much for joining us. If you have ideas for our December community call that you'd like for us to organize sort of a thematic discussion, or whether it would just be better to have more unstructured time, we want to do what meets our membership's needs. So please feel free to email me and let me know. You can email any of us, and we would love to hear from you.
Yes.
Good luck and thank you. Sorry, Jeff.
No, just seconding what you said. Please email any of us with any of these issues. I know the APPI's got some challenges, and we'd like to hear about those so that we can work with the engineers and vendors to figure that out. And it's going to be better, but I do know that this version has got some really good potential. And we want to thank again Dr. Hill for all her efforts.
Thank you, Kimberly.
No, you're welcome.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good month.
Hey,
Happy
everyone.
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.